What is up, guys? It's time for another fighting game hot takes video. I asked you guys on Twitter to hit me with your hot takes and unpopular opinions related to fighting games and the fighting game community. You guys sent in a ton of them. Make sure to follow me at Crofts on Twitter if you're not already, so you'll know when I'm doing these in the future and you can have your voices heard. So with that out of the way, let's jump straight into the hot takes. Playing characters that are not top tier is a waste of time unless your main game is Twitter. So I've talked before a little bit about the philosophy of just pick a top tier, and while I do kind of understand it and agree with it to a degree, I think that people play games for different reasons. I think if the reason that you're playing a game is to place well in tournament or to get to a really high rank, then yes, just pick top tiers. You are making it harder for yourself if you don't pick top tier characters. But that's not the reason why everyone's playing. Like, obviously, most people just play games to have fun. And if you have more fun playing as a character that you prefer over playing as a top tier, that's not a waste of time. It's not a waste of time to do something fun. People play games for fun. It's fine. Or, like, personally, my goal is, I want to be good, but I'm not really trying to get, first place at EVO out here. I'm trying to make entertaining content for you guys to watch. And I think that a lot of times it's more effective and more entertaining for me to play characters that I find interesting, for me to mess with new stuff that maybe you haven't seen before, as opposed to just being the millionth in a line of, Bardock and Super Saiyan Goku players. So yeah, I understand the pick a top tier sentiment. I agree with it to a degree, but you gotta remember, not everybody is playing because they want to be the next Justin Wong. A lot of people are playing just to relax on a weekend or whatever, and let people play what they want. I think that that's always the way to go. Anime fighting games are literally the only fighting games that are fun to watch and play for a long amount of time, due to their faster pace and more flashy combat and mechanics. I mean, first of all, I think if you're locking yourself out to, I only like to watch anime fighting games, like, you're really missing out. Like, could you imagine if someone was like, I only like to watch comedy movies? Oh, like John Wick is good? Forget that. I don't care. I only watch comedies, no action movies. Like, why would you deliberately exclude a bunch of entertaining options from sort of your worldview? First of all, I don't think that that's a good way to go. But also, I think that flashy combos and, like, flashing lights and, like, cool looking effects and stuff like that's kind of like a surface level enjoyment of the game. I think when people really get into enjoying watching a fighting game, they're enjoying it because they're analyzing the decision making of the two players, and you're like getting surprised or impressed when the players think of things that you wouldn't have thought of, when they make really good reads, when they pull out unexpected tech that you've never seen before. That's when it gets really crazy and exciting to watch fighting games. And that is across every genre of fighting games. That obviously doesn't just exist in anime. Like, a lot of people find Street Fighter V a pretty boring game, but like when you're watching Daigo versus Punk or something like that, it is so sick to watch the decision making, the reactions, the hit confirms, all that kind of stuff that you would never be able to do because obviously none of us are as good as Daigo and Punk. Stuff like that is the sickest to watch. And even what would otherwise be, like, to an outside observer, they would be like pretty boring, uneventful matches, but to someone who really understands what's going on and is able to see sort of the high-level decisions being made by the players, that stuff is the sickest stuff to watch. So yeah, hard to disagree on this one. There are 4 Gokus in the game, and they deserve to be there because of how iconic they are to the series. Arxis could have easily went more overboard with it, but all of them represent Goku's entire life pretty well, and I'm happy we got them. Buff base Goku, please. I do agree that base Goku probably needs a buff to be competitively viable, but as for the 4 Gokus being, like, good for the game or being necessary, I don't think I necessarily agree. I mean, I do appreciate that they all play fairly different. They all kind of have a unique play style. But, like, I don't know. The only one that I'm really okay with is GT Goku. I don't really feel like base Goku and blue Goku add to the game that much compared to if they were just new characters, non-Goku characters. I think that's what I would have preferred. It just gets a little tiring to see the same characters over and over. And while I do acknowledge that Goku is kind of the heart and soul of the Dragon Ball franchise, like, we don't need that much of him, right? Like there aren't like there aren't like 4 Ryus in Street Fighter. I know like Ryu and Ken play similar, but they have like different like attitudes, different aesthetics, stuff like that that I think set them apart. Whereas the Gokus are a little bit similar. So I mean, I don't think that it's terrible that we have 4 Gokus. I just think maybe those character slots could have been better used on someone else. But I have a feeling that the reason we have so many Gokus is because of the speed of development, because they were able to get us more characters, because some of them are kind of like clone-ish characters between the Gokus and Vegetas. I'm pretty sure that the reduced development time is the big reason why we have so many of them. The FGC as a whole is too quick to dismiss valid criticisms as scrub talk, and I feel it makes even high-level players afraid to express their thoughts because they're expected to grin and bear it. So I don't agree that high-level players are afraid to express their thoughts. I think most pro players are pretty outspoken and willing to just say what they think. Like when Street Fighter 4 came out and a lot of pro players didn't like it, they made their voices heard. They talked about they think the game sucks. And the same with 5, same with Street Fighter Cross Tekken, same with a lot of people in Dragon Ball FighterZ. I don't think any top players are afraid to speak their mind. But as for the FGC as a whole dismissing valid criticisms as scrub talk, I do kind of agree. I think that the fighting game community does not want to empathize with the new player experience. Like if someone comes in and they're like, oh, the game doesn't explain how to play, I don't know what I'm doing, people are like, well, get good, like look it up on YouTube, it's not a problem. But like it is a problem. People shouldn't have to look at outside information to have a basic understanding of the game. So I think that people are not really willing to they're not willing to set their mindset back to what it was like for them when they were a new player. People who have been playing for many years, they just can't even identify with what it was like when they were new. They forgot what that whole experience was like. So I think that might be one of the reasons why fighting games are considered a pretty hard genre to get into. They're still pretty niche, is just because like the new player experience, I feel like, is not valued to the level that it should be, and we're not taking people's real experiences. Like, people really do experience the things they're saying with, like, going online and hating it because you don't know what you're doing and all this stuff, not knowing how to do your character's moves because there isn't a tutorial, like these kinds of things. I don't think that people are empathizing enough with that, and I think that is leading to some of the issues with fighting games being like this niche clique that people can't get into if they're a new player. So I would say 50-50. I agree with this tweet. Between his assist, set play, and neutral controlling options, Frieza is top 3. Oh, this is a powerful one. You have a lot of power contained in this tweet. You know, hard disagree from me. I think Frieza is probably closer to bottom 3 than he is to top 3. Although I have come around on his assist. I used to be saying that I think his assist is not good, but I've come around. His assist is pretty strong, I think. Now that people have started to figure out like specific setups for it and stuff, it's very, very strong. He has a great assist, but I don't think that makes up for his sort of point character gameplay. I just feel like it's an uphill battle in most matchups with Frieza. Like, you don't get a big enough reward on hit to make up the risk of just the opponent getting in on you and killing you to make that worth it. So I don't think Frieza is that good. He's probably not bottom 3, but I think he's probably like bottom 10, bottom 15. And I definitely don't think he's top 3 material. But I am praying that someone proves me wrong. Someone who's godlike, pick Frieza, optimize it, take him into tournaments, and prove that I'm wrong. Because Frieza is a sick character. He's a character that I would love to see a lot more of. I just don't see that happening because I don't really think the game is catered to his playstyle particularly well. Getting mad at games doesn't mean you're passionate. It just shows that you're immature and you can't handle the reality of the game. So I will say that I don't like something that like a lot of fighting game people say is like, oh, if you're not upset when you lose, then you don't care enough. You'll never be good because you don't care enough. And I don't think that's true. Like, do you think Daigo is upset when he loses? I don't. Of course not. I think Daigo's probably happy when he loses because then he goes like, oh, this is like stuff that I can study and get better at. Like, if Daigo just wins all the time, he's not satisfied because he's not improving. I think that's the attitude that's better. You don't want to be results oriented. I say this a lot. It's like poker is like this too, or any game with large amounts of randomness like Magic the Gathering or something. Results-oriented thinking is the wrong way to go. It literally doesn't matter if you win or lose, because what you really should be aiming for is improvement. So I think that if you're satisfied with your improvement, you don't have to get mad. I think the idea that if you're not getting mad, you're not doing it right, I personally strongly disagree with that. I don't like that attitude at all. I don't necessarily think that getting mad at a loss means you're immature or anything. I think it's a perfectly normal human interaction to get upset when you lose, but I don't necessarily think that you should be focusing on getting upset. You should feel like if you lose and you're not mad about it, I don't think that's an issue. I think that's fine. So those are my thoughts on the getting mad at video games argument, I guess. We should drop SF5 and go back to SF4, maybe even with Edition Select. It's funny, I feel like we hear this every time a new Street Fighter game comes out. Street Fighter 4 came out and it was hated by the previous Street Fighter community. Everyone said, let's go back to Third Strike. Of course, when Third Strike came out, that was hated as well. Everyone said, let's go back to Street Fighter Alpha or Street Fighter 2. And now that 5's out, we need to go back to Street Fighter 4, I guess. I mean, if we were going to drop 5 and go back to an older Street Fighter 4 would definitely not be my first choice. I think I would probably prefer Third Strike or Alpha 2 or Super Turbo or even Hyper Fighting, something like that. But no, I don't think we need to drop SF5 and go back to Ultra Street Fighter 4. Like, people let people play what they want. And judging by the EVO entrant numbers, a lot of people want to play Street Fighter 5, so I'm not going to get in the way of that. Even the so-called worst character on a tier list, joke characters excluded, are viable if one is willing to put in the time and effort to learn them. Tier lists seem to kill player creativity when you're not really playing if you use this character becomes the accepted norm. So I think generally, I got kind of a lot of takes of like, too much emphasis is put on tier lists. Tier lists don't matter, you can win with any character, blah blah blah. I think that if you legitimately don't think that tier lists have an effect on gameplay, if you really don't think that playing a top tier character gives you a stronger chance to win than playing a low tier character, you're probably either not that experienced with fighting games or like you didn't play fighting games back before kind of the modern era. I would say like pre-SF4, the games were so much less balanced and tier lists mattered a lot more. Nowadays, I do agree, like Dragon Ball FighterZ, I think every character in the game is viable, but I don't think that that means that you're going to see top players playing, you know, Android 17 or whatever, because why would you when it's just easier to play a top tier? But I think that if you were willing to put in the effort, every character is viable in Dragon Ball FighterZ, but not every fighting game is like that. You are not going to win EVO in Marvel vs. Capcom 2 playing Ryu. Like, it's just not going to happen. He's garbage. He doesn't have anywhere near the tools of a top tier character. And trust me, you might be thinking, well, people just haven't figured out the tech with him the way they have with someone like Magneto or Storm. But no, they have. People have explored these characters very in depth, and there's just nothing there. Old games were so much more imbalanced. And similarly, like, Third Strike, I know like you see Kuroda winning with Q and whatever, but on the whole, Q has like really bad matchups against most of the casts. So to win, you're having to outplay your opponent to such a strong degree that for most players, it's literally not possible. Like, imagine like the best player in the world at a game is like a 9 out of 10, and the second best player in the world at a game is like an 8.5 out of 10. And if the second best player is playing top tiers and the best player is playing bottom tiers, all of a sudden the best player is not going to be winning anymore. It's too big of a gap. So I don't think that most people are going to subject themselves to that. And I do think that in most modern games, you can kind of play whoever you want, but that has not always been the case. Old games were much less balanced, and in old games there are characters that literally like don't have a shot of winning if you're fighting against someone of a close skill level to you. So yeah. Wawa is the single most overrated food provider for the FGC. The food is mediocre at best, and the only reason it's considered good is because the only thing the FGC can get after their events end at 12 a.m. is Wawa, so they don't know any better. Fight me. So I have no opinion on this. I've never eaten Wawa. Literally, the only reason I'm posting this is because I'm hoping that you guys will get riled up in the comments. Let me know. Do you agree with this guy, or are you guys Wawa diehards? I don't even know what it is. Is it like a convenience store? Is it like a 7-Eleven? And people are excited to eat food from here? Someone in the comments explain to me what the appeal is of Wawa and whether you agree with this tweet. I just thought maybe it would be fun to get a conversation started on that. This one is actually a friend's opinion that I will share. Iframes in any context for any reason are bad for a game. Thoughts? I think your friend is a little bit misinformed. I mean, like, how does this make sense? How can you just say anytime that your character is invincible, that's bad? That's bad for the game. Like, could you imagine Dark Souls with no iframes? It would be impossible because roll wouldn't do anything. You would just die every time you try to roll. Same with like a game like Bayonetta or whatever. Any game with like a dodge, you need iframes to make the dodge feel good and to make it work. It would be unplayable without it. And when it comes to fighting games, not having any iframes would be really, really bad for sort of the flow of the game. It would make it really hard in a game like Street Fighter to get out of like oppressive mix-up situations or like 50-50s. If you don't have an invincible move to get you out of there, it's just a disaster. It's a nightmare of a game. Street Fighter 2 would not work without invincible moves. It would be so busted. You would just knock the opponent down and tick throw them to death, and they would have nothing to do to get out of it, and it would not be a fun game to play. So no, I think iframes are an important aspect of a lot of genres of games, but particularly fighting games. They just would not work without it, period. The game would be significantly worse if there was no such thing as invincibility. Granblue Fantasy Versus might look pretty good, but I feel like the easy combo routes might result in a lack of pro or tournament play. I mean, it's not like there's never been a popular tournament game with easy or very little combos. Like, look at Street Fighter V. That game has like the easiest combos. Most combos in that game are pretty baby easy and not particularly long either. So I don't really see that as an issue. Now, if we think that like maybe the sort of beginner-focused aspect of the game will not make it a very highly tournament-played game, like maybe I could understand that argument, but I don't see it as an issue. Like, from playing a bunch of Granblue in the beta, the game is very, very similar to a game like Street Fighter 4. It's a very similar game in a lot of ways. The combo system, the fact that you're linking normals together and then canceling that into special moves, the slow jumps, and like effective anti-airs, invincible dragon punches, stuff like that. It feels a lot like Street Fighter 4, which is, you know, generally one of the more beloved tournament fighting games of the last decade or so. So I don't really see it as an issue. I don't think it's going to be a problem. I think the only thing that might limit Granblue Fantasy Versus being a popular competitive game is just if the game's not popular. If it comes out and people aren't into it, then, you know, it's not going to happen. There's a lot of fighting games all trying to vie for those EVO spots, so it's not like a given that Granblue Fantasy Versus is going to be one of them, but the game seems fun. I haven't, you know, put a ton of time into it, but I put maybe like 5 hours into it in the beta, and it seems like a lot of fun, so I'm excited for it to come out, and we finally will get more time in it and see exactly how it stacks up to other games. Smash players ending an entire game because they lose a single stock is the stupidest and most childish thing I've ever seen. Yeah, I generally don't like to see this. Like, there was that example with the Jigglypuff player against the Ice Climbers player, where the Jigglypuff player had the lead and the Ice Climbers player just stood there and like waited for a timeout or whatever, and he like walked away. And I'm not down with that. I think that, you know, you're kind of like, you know, you're disrespecting your opponent, you're disrespecting the audience. And it's like, could you imagine if in Marvel vs. Capcom 2, people would just give up every time they're down to their last character? I'm sure some players do that, but like if Justin Wong just gave up if his first 2 characters died really fast, we would not have half of the hype comeback videos that we currently have that you can find online in that game. Like, yes, it's really, really hard to make comebacks in that game and in Smash Brothers. But it's not impossible, so, you know, you're limiting yourself more than anything. You're completely blocking out your ability to make that, you know, 1% or 0.1% comeback. Like, you might think, okay, if I have a 0.1% of making this comeback, it's not even worth going for. But, like, you play over 1,000 matches if you're, like, a high-level player. You play more than 1,000 matches in your life, so don't you want at least one of those matches to have an insane once-in-a-lifetime comeback that everyone gets hype over and shares forever? Why would you deny yourself that opportunity? So, yeah, definitely not down with the whole, well, I lost my first stock or I lost my first 2 stocks. Better just give up. On to the next game. I'm not down with that at all. So, yeah, I guess I kind of agree with this tweet. Super Saiyan Goku isn't top tier. High mid at best. He struggles to open people up. I mean, it's true that he doesn't really have very good mix-ups. He's not going to be opening people up. But obviously, to me, Super Saiyan Goku is one of the most valuable characters in the game to have on your team. It's kind of hard to judge assist characters on a tier list. Like, it's not like Super Saiyan Goku is only good because of his assist, but that's a big part of it. He's just the best character in the game who happens to have like a really, really amazing assist. And that's why he's so valuable. Like, in Marvel 2, I feel like I go to Marvel 2 for like every example, but it's like in Marvel 2, is Captain Commando a top tier character? Like, it seems hard to say that a character who's complete garbage on point could be top tier, but his assist is so valuable and so important to so many top tier teams that it seems wrong to not put him in top tier. It's kind of the same with Goku. Like, he's fine on point. If we were ignoring assists and purely ranking characters based on how good they are as a point character, I do think Super Saiyan Goku would be about halfway up the list. But with the assist included, and with his comeback ability and all this nonsense, I think that he's definitely one of the best characters in the game, so hard disagree with this tweet. GT Goku is all the worst things of Dragon Ball FighterZ in one, and tilted away any balance the game was gaining. You know, I actually disagree with this. A lot of people hate on GT Goku, but I don't think GT Goku is that big of a problem. I would actually be totally fine if they buffed every other character to be just as broken as GT Goku. Like, the fact that he can do one-touch kills, to me, is not a problem. If you can do a one-touch kill, but it requires like 5 meters, or it requires sparking, or it requires a very specific corner plus assist setup, like, to me, that is not an issue, and I think it would actually be better for the game if we had more of that. That would like make the game less slow, less reliant on like snapback fuzzy meta and stuff like that. So yeah, I don't think GT Goku, like, yes, obviously he's a very strong character, but I don't think like he like needs to be nerfed because he's ruining the game or whatever. No, not at all. So yeah, I guess I disagree with this tweet. Like, just because a character is good doesn't mean that they're problematic for the game. Like, just because someone is the best character in the game doesn't mean that they're ruining the game. Someone has to be best. I don't even think GT Goku is the best character, but imagine if he was. Someone has to be the best character in the game. And so I don't really feel like he's breaking the game or doing anything that makes it unfun. In fact, I would say GT Goku is a lot more fun than some of the other top tiers. Like, for example, Piccolo or Gotenks. I think those guys are the ones who are really unfun. So, yeah, those are my thoughts on GT Goku. I think he's fine. UNIST won't get nearly as many viewers as other games could have gotten if they were on the roster. I would kind of have two counterpoints to this. Like, one, UNIST is probably not going to be the least viewed game on the EVO roster. Like, I would say BB Tag is most likely to get the lowest viewership of any game at EVO, especially judging by the entrants. There's like 3 games right now that have fewer entrants than UNIST. So definitely, it's not going to be the least popular game at EVO, so it seems like a weird one to go after if you have some sort of like, this game shouldn't be here, my favorite game should be there instead. Like, if you're coming at it with that agenda, I don't think that UNIST is the game that you should be going after, because it seems more popular than at least 1 or 2 other games on the roster. Second of all, I would say it's not all about viewership, right? If we were just trying to do games that would get the most number of viewers, then EVO should probably have like League of Legends in it, or like, you know, Apex Legends or something like that. Maybe fighting games are not the way to go if purely you're just looking for high numbers of viewers. It's not just about the number of viewers, right? It's about the community as well. And UNIST is a game with a very, very strong community who are die-hard, who make grassroots efforts to get their game into tournaments and get them to have hype side tournaments and stuff like that. It deserves its slot, very much so. And also, in addition to it being about viewers in the community, it's also about the players. And I don't know if you've checked, but UNIST is like 5th on the entrant leaderboard right now. It's got a lot of players. So I don't think it would be fair to say, you know, your game is not going to get very many Twitch viewers, so we can't run it at EVO. Even though there's other games that have fewer entrants, even though you guys run your own tournaments at other majors and get a ton of entrants, often one of the most entered side games at like every tournament, even with all that, I don't think you belong. Just because you might get less Twitch viewers, I don't think that that's reasonable. So hard disagree with like basically the entire premise of this tweet, I guess. Custom combos have ruined every fighting game that includes them. Well, it's definitely true that custom combos are very hard to balance. They tend to create issues. Street Fighter Alpha 3 custom combos damn near did break the game. They're very busted in that game. V-ism is a huge problem, leads to a lot of infinites, a lot of kind of degenerate gameplay. Similarly, Street Fighter 3 Third Strike, you know, everybody hates Ganajin because it's so damn powerful. It makes Yun an insane problem to deal with, who shuts down a lot of the cast. But there are games where it's worked, like CVS 2, Capcom vs. SNK 2. Custom combos are strong, yeah, they're very, very strong, but they're not like game-breaking, or like they're not like fun-destroying, I guess. Like at Combo Breaker, Grand Finals of CVS 2, neither player even used custom combos. They both used C Groove, so... Similarly, Alpha 2, custom combos are pretty broken in Alpha 2 for sure. They're like pretty busted. You can do like 50%. You can create all these unblockable situations with them, but I don't think they ruin the game. The game is still extremely fun and one of the all-time best Street Fighter games, despite the custom combo mechanic, despite all of the issues that came along with that. So no, I don't think they're a problem in general, but I do agree that they're very, very hard to balance, but I don't think they necessarily have ruined every game that they're in. I think there are some really great games that include custom combos. I think Tekken is overrated and not as hype as people make it out to be. Nonsensical hitboxes, lots of forced guesses make the game uninteresting in a lot of places, and Rage is a really shitty forced hype comeback. So the only aspect of this that I agree with is I don't like Rage. I think Rage is a pretty simplistic, kind of uninteresting mechanic. I don't think it needs to be in the game. But nonsensical hitboxes, like what? Could you give me some examples? Could you show me maybe some clips of hitboxes that don't make sense to you? I think Tekken's got pretty normal hitboxes. And lots of forced guesses, that's like a weird criticism to me. Like every fighting game has forced guesses. They're called mix-ups. And like unreactable lows, I don't see that as like a big issue. I mean, there need to be mix-ups that you have to deal with, otherwise you'll just block forever. Kind of like how Dragon Ball FighterZ, like the big criticism is that you can just block forever. Matches take forever because the whole time the guy just blocks everything because every mix-up is reactable. Like it's good for the game to have mix-ups, and I don't really see unreactable lows or anything like that as too big of an issue with Tekken. So yeah, very hard to disagree with this. Tekken is one of the best games on the market right now, Tekken 7. And you should probably give it like more of an earnest effort in learning it if you're gonna make such criticisms. But I do agree that Rage is not that interesting and not very fun either. Alright, last one here. UNIST has the best soundtrack in fighting game history. I do agree that UNIST has a very good soundtrack. Very, very good. But it's not perfect. It's got some duds, for sure. I know some people have an attachment to Nanase theme, but man, I dropped that character because I could not handle her theme. But it does have some really good tracks. But I wouldn't even say that it's got the best soundtrack of modern fighting games. I think the best modern fighting game soundtrack is Tekken 7. But if we open it up to classic fighting games as well, like, wow, this has a lot of competition. We got Third Strike, probably my favorite personal fighting game soundtrack, Street Fighter 3 Third Strike. We've got, like, Smash Ultimate and Smash Melee. How good are those soundtracks? They're crazy good. There's a lot of good soundtracks out there. CVS 2, that's a great soundtrack. There's really a lot of competition, and while I do think that UNIST has a very good soundtrack, I don't think it stacks up to some of the best ever fighting game soundtracks, but I appreciate the comment regardless. And guys, with that, that's the end of our little list of hot takes here. I hope you enjoyed the video. Let me know in the comments if there's anything that you particularly disagree with me about. And once again, make sure to follow me on Twitter so that you'll know when I'm doing these videos in the future. And you can send me in your unpopular opinions, and I'll react to those as well. So, as always, thank you so much for watching, guys, and I will see you in the next one.